The turquoise waters surrounding Isla Paradiso shimmered under the relentless Caribbean sun. A deceptive facade masking the darkness that festered beneath its pristine surface. Victor Sinclair, a name whispered with a mixture of awe and dread in the highest echelons of society, had carved out his own personal fiefdom on this remote island. It was a playground for the ultra-rich, a sanctuary where laws were suggestions and morality a quaint inconvenience. Helicopters, sleek and black, ferried in a constant stream of guests, CEOs, celebrities, and shadowy figures whose fortunes were built on secrets and exploitation. The air thrummed with the promise of indulgence, of desires catered to without limit, but beneath the veneer of luxury lurked a chilling truth. On Isla Paradiso, anything went, and the price of admission was often far steeper than money. Sinclair himself was a study in controlled power. A man of imposing stature, with eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He moved through his domain with the effortless authority of a king surveying his realm. He cultivated an image of philanthropic magnanimity, funding charities and art projects, effectively laundering his reputation along with his ill-gotten gains. But those who dared to look closer saw the ruthlessness beneath the polished surface, the casual cruelty with which he disposed of those who displeased him. He was a collector of rare and dangerous things, priceless artifacts, exotic animals, and, most disturbingly, people. Anya Petrova was one such acquisition. Her story, like many on Isla Paradiso, was one of forced servitude masked by gilded cages. Once a promising young artist from a small village in Eastern Europe, her life had been irrevocably altered when her father, a journalist investigating Sinclair's shady dealings, vanished without a trace. Anya, desperate to find him, had followed the trail, a perilous path that led her directly into Sinclair's clutches. He offered her a twisted bargain. Her father's life in exchange for her unwavering loyalty and compliance. She had no choice but to accept. Now, she existed as a phantom within Sinclair's opulent world, a beautiful and silent ornament in his collection. She attended lavish parties, poured champagne for corrupt dignitaries, and endured the unwanted attention of Sinclair's predatory guests. She learned to navigate the treacherous currents of island society. A master of subtle gestures and carefully chosen words, she had become adept at reading the unspoken language of power, at anticipating Sinclair's moods, at surviving. But beneath the carefully constructed facade of compliance, a spark of defiance still flickered. She hadn't forgotten her father, nor had she abandoned hope of escape. Her days were a monotonous cycle of forced smiles and hollow interactions. She was confined to the main villa, a sprawling architectural masterpiece that felt more like a prison than a home. The walls were adorned with priceless artwork, but Anya saw only the bars of her cage. The lush gardens offered no solace, only a constant reminder of the freedom she had lost. She was surrounded by beauty, yet she felt utterly desolate. Tonight was no different. Anya stood on the balcony of her suite, overlooking the shimmering expanse of the ocean. A gala was in full swing below, the sounds of music and laughter carrying on the warm night air. She could see Sinclair holding court. Surrounded by his sycophantic admirers, he raised his glass in a toast, his words inaudible but undoubtedly self-serving. Anya felt a surge of disgust. She clutched a small, intricately carved wooden bird in her hand. A memento from her father. It was a reminder of her past, of the life that had been stolen from her. It was also a symbol of hope, a promise that one day she would be free. She closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer for strength, for courage, for a miracle. Little did she know, that miracle was already on its way, disguised as a wealthy investor with a steely gaze and a hidden agenda. The storm was brewing on the horizon, and Isla Paradiso was about to learn that even paradise has its price. The storm Anya unknowingly wished for was brewing not in the Caribbean sky, but in the sterile, windowless conference room of a nondescript building in Geneva. Here, far removed from the sun-drenched decadence of Isla Paradiso, sat Bishop, a man forged in the fires of countless covert operations. His real name was known to very few. To most, he was simply Bishop, a designation earned through years of unwavering loyalty and lethal efficiency. His face, etched with the map of past conflicts and moral compromises, betrayed nothing of the turmoil that often simmered beneath his stoic exterior. He was a weapon, honed to perfection, and now he was being aimed at Victor Sinclair. Across the polished mahogany table sat a woman known only as the director. Her sharp, intelligent eyes missed nothing, and her voice, though soft, carried the weight of unquestionable authority. She represented an organization shrouded in secrecy, an entity that operated beyond the reach of governments and laws, dedicated to maintaining a delicate balance in a world teetering on the brink of chaos. They were the silent guardians, the unseen hand correcting the excesses of power. Sinclair has become problematic, the director stated, her tone devoid of emotion. His activities have escalated beyond acceptable parameters. Human trafficking, illegal arms dealing, financial manipulation on a global scale. The list goes on. She slid a thick dossier across the table, its pages filled with damning evidence, photographs, financial records, intercepted communications. Bishop didn't need to read it all. He trusted the director's assessment. We've been monitoring him for years, she continued. But direct intervention has been complicated. Sinclair is well protected, both physically and politically. Any overt action would be met with swift and severe repercussions. Bishop leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering. Which is where I come in. The director nodded. Precisely. We need someone to infiltrate Isla Paradiso, gather irrefutable evidence, and expose Sinclair's operation. Someone with the skills to navigate that world, the resilience to withstand its temptations, and the ruthlessness to do what needs to be done. And the plausible deniability, Bishop added, a hint of cynicism in his voice. He knew the game. He was the expendable asset, the fall guy if things went south. Of course, the director acknowledged, her expression unchanging. But there's more to it than just exposing Sinclair's crimes. There's a young woman on the island, Anya Petrova. We believe she possesses crucial information that could cripple Sinclair's entire network. Bishop raised an eyebrow. And you want me to extract her as well? Her safety is paramount, the director emphasized. She's been through a great deal. Sinclair is keeping her close. Bishop studied the photograph of Anya Petrova in the dossier. Her eyes, though filled with a haunting sadness, held a spark of intelligence and resilience. He saw a reflection of his own past in her, the innocent caught in the crossfire of powerful men. What's my cover? Bishop asked, his mind already calculating the angles, assessing the risks. A wealthy investor looking to expand his portfolio, the director replied. We've created a credible backstory, complete with financial records and references. You'll be introduced to Sinclair through a mutual acquaintance. Bishop nodded. He knew the drill. He would immerse himself in the role, become the character he needed to be, a chameleon blending seamlessly into the environment. He would play the game, dance with the devils, and wait for the opportune moment to strike. One more thing, the director added, her voice dropping slightly. Sinclair is not a fool. He's surrounded by loyalists, men and women who would die for him. He'll be watching you, testing you. Trust no one. Bishop stood up, his movements fluid and precise. Understood. He picked up the dossier, his eyes scanning the details of his mission. Isla Paradiso awaited, a glittering paradise masking a viper's nest of deceit and corruption. He was walking into the lion's den, but he was prepared to face whatever lurked within. He was Bishop, and he was there to deliver justice, one way or another. He knew the clock was ticking, not just for Sinclair, but for Anya as well. He couldn't afford to fail. The roar of the helicopter blades faded as Bishop stepped onto the manicured lawn of Isla Paradiso. He had traded his Geneva attire for a bespoke Italian suit, sunglasses shielding his eyes from the glare of the sun. He was no longer Bishop, the hardened operative. He was now Mr. Jonathan Blake, a shrewd investor with a penchant for luxury and a keen eye for opportunity. The transformation was seamless, a testament to his years of training. He was greeted by a smiling, impeccably dressed woman who introduced herself as Isabella, Sinclair's personal assistant. Her charm was practiced, her eyes assessing him with a subtle intensity. Welcome to Isla Paradiso, Mr. Blake, she said, her voice like honeyed silk. Mr. Sinclair is eager to meet you. As they walked towards the main villa, Bishop took in his surroundings. The opulence was overwhelming, meticulously landscaped gardens, sparkling fountains, and sculptures that could fetch millions at auction. But beneath the surface, he sensed a palpable tension, a feeling of being watched. He knew Sinclair's security was tight, and he was under constant surveillance. He was introduced to Sinclair in the villa's grand hall, a cavernous space adorned with priceless artwork and overlooking the ocean. Sinclair greeted him with a warm smile and a firm handshake. His eyes, however, remained cold and calculating. "Jonathan, welcome," Sinclair boomed, his voice resonating with power. "I've heard great things about your investments." "The pleasure is all mine, Victor," Bishop replied, matching Sinclair's charisma with his own carefully crafted charm. "I'm always looking for new opportunities, and Isla Paradiso seems to offer unparalleled potential." Over the next few days, Bishop immersed himself in the social whirl of Isla Paradiso. He attended lavish parties, dined with influential figures, and played the role of the wealthy investor to perfection. He met a cast of characters straight out of a thriller novel: corrupt politicians, arms dealers masquerading as philanthropists, and socialites with secrets darker than their tans. Among them was Marcus Thorne, Sinclair's head of security, a hulking figure with a permanent scowl and eyes that could strip a man bare. Thorne was always nearby, a silent shadow observing Bishop's every move. Bishop knew Thorne was the gatekeeper, the one who decided who got close to Sinclair and who didn't. Then there was Serena Dubois, a stunningly beautiful socialite with a reputation for being both seductive and dangerous. She seemed to take a particular interest in Bishop, flirting openly and probing him with carefully worded questions. Bishop suspected she was Sinclair's eyes and ears, a master manipulator skilled at extracting information. But it was Anya Petrova who captured his attention the most. He saw her at a gala, a silent figure standing by Sinclair's side. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her eyes that drew him in, her eyes that held a deep sadness and a flicker of defiance. He recognized her distress, the subtle signs of someone trapped and desperate. He made a point of approaching her, introducing himself as Jonathan Blake. Anya's response was cautious, her voice barely a whisper. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Blake. Please, call me Jonathan," Bishop said, offering a warm smile. "And you are?" "Anya," she replied, her eyes darting towards Sinclair, who was watching them intently. "I assist Mr. Sinclair." Bishop subtly observed her body language, the way she flinched at Sinclair's gaze, the barely perceptible tremor in her hand. He knew she was afraid, but he also sensed a strength beneath the surface. He had to find a way to reach her, to gain her trust. As he mingled with the other guests, he continued to observe Anya, noting her every move. He saw the subtle glances she exchanged with a young waiter, the way she lingered near a particular doorway. That he was piecing together the puzzle, trying to understand her situation and how he could help her. Infiltrating Isla Paradiso was only the first step. Now, he had to navigate the treacherous social landscape, identify his allies, and uncover Sinclair's secrets, and most importantly, he had to find a way to reach Anya Petrova, the key to unlocking Sinclair's empire. The game had begun, and Bishop was ready to play. The stakes were high, and the consequences of failure were unthinkable. Beneath the glittering facade of Isla Paradiso, Bishop began to peel back the layers of Sinclair's carefully constructed reality, revealing a world of shocking depravity. He used his access as a potential investor to explore the island, subtly probing for weaknesses and inconsistencies in Sinclair's operation. He discovered hidden passages, restricted areas, and a network of surveillance cameras that monitored every corner of the estate. One evening, Sinclair invited Bishop to a private gathering held in a secluded part of the island. The setting was a lavishly decorated underground bunker, where a crowd of wealthy elites cheered on a brutal, bare-knuckle fight. Bishop watched in disgust as two men, clearly coerced into participating, beat each other senseless for the amusement of the spectators. He recognized several prominent figures in the crowd: politicians, CEOs, and even a member of a royal family, all complicit in Sinclair's twisted entertainment. The Fight Club was just the tip of the iceberg. Through careful observation and discreet questioning, Bishop uncovered evidence of Sinclair's blackmail schemes. He learned that Sinclair collected compromising information on his guests, illicit affairs, financial misdeeds, even violent crimes, using it to control them and ensure their loyalty. He had built a network of complicit officials, judges, and law enforcement officers who turned a blind eye to his activities in exchange for lavish bribes. He also discovered the truth behind Sinclair's charitable foundation, which was actually a front for money laundering. Funds donated to the foundation were siphoned off into offshore accounts, used to finance Sinclair's illegal operations. The more he learned, the more appalled he became. Sinclair was a cancer, corrupting everything he touched. But it was witnessing Anya's mistreatment that truly solidified Bishop's resolve. One afternoon, he saw Sinclair publicly humiliate her at a poolside gathering. Sinclair, in a fit of pique, berated her for a minor transgression. His words laced with cruelty and contempt. Anya stood silently, her face pale, enduring the abuse with quiet dignity. Bishop felt a surge of anger, a protective instinct rising within him. He knew he had to get her out of there, not just for the information she possessed, but for her own safety. As Bishop delved deeper into Sinclair's world, he knew he was walking a dangerous tightrope. Thorne, Sinclair's security chief, was becoming increasingly suspicious that he shadowed Bishop relentlessly. His eyes filled with distrust. Serena Dubois, the seductive socialite, continued to probe him with her subtle interrogations, trying to uncover his true motives. One night, Bishop decided to explore Sinclair's private study, hoping to find more concrete evidence of his crimes. He managed to bypass the security system, using his skills to disable the alarms and cameras. He searched the study meticulously, finding incriminating documents and financial records. But as he was about to leave, he heard footsteps approaching. He quickly hid behind a large bookshelf, holding his breath as Thorne entered the room. Thorne scanned the study, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. He seemed to sense that something was amiss. Thorne walked over to the bookshelf where Bishop was hiding, his hand reaching for a hidden switch that activated a security panel. Bishop knew he was about to be exposed. He prepared to fight, ready to take down Thorne and escape. Just as Thorne pressed the switch, a loud explosion rocked the villa. The lights flickered and died, plunging the study into darkness. Chaos erupted outside as alarms blared and people screamed. Thorne, momentarily distracted, turned towards the source of the explosion. Bishop seized the opportunity. He slipped out of the study, disappearing into the confusion. He knew he had been lucky, but he also knew that his cover was hanging by a thread. He had to move quickly, gather the evidence he needed, and get Anya off the island before it was too late. Sinclair was closing in, and the stakes were higher than ever. The explosion, later attributed to a generator malfunction, bought Bishop some time, but he knew he couldn't afford to waste it. He needed to make contact with Anya, to solidify their alliance and extract the information she possessed before Sinclair tightened his grip. He used the chaos as cover, slipping away from the main villa and heading towards the gardens, a place he had seen Anya frequent in the early mornings. He found her near a secluded rose garden. Her face pale and drawn, she looked startled to see him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "Jonathan," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "What are you doing here? It's not safe." "I know," Bishop replied, his voice low and urgent. "But we need to talk. I know about Sinclair, about what he's doing here. And I know about you." Anya's eyes widened. How could you?" "It doesn't matter," Bishop said. "What matters is that I'm here to help you. To get you out of this place." Anya hesitated, her mind racing. She had been living in fear for so long, trusting no one. Could she really trust this man, this stranger who had suddenly appeared in her life? Bishop saw the doubt in her eyes. "I know it's hard to believe," he said, "but I promise you, I'm not like Sinclair. I won't hurt you. I just want to help." He then revealed a detail about her father that he had learned from the director, a detail only someone with inside knowledge would know. Anya's expression changed, the fear replaced by a flicker of recognition. You know about my father?" "Yes," Bishop said. "I know he was investigating Sinclair. I know what happened to him." Anya's voice trembled. He's still alive, isn't he?" Bishop hesitated. He didn't want to give her false hope, but he couldn't lie to her either. "I don't know for sure," he said, "but I promise you, I'll do everything I can to find him. If he's alive, I'll bring him back to you." Tears welled up in Anya's eyes. She had been holding on to hope for so long, clinging to the belief that her father was still out there. What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Tell me everything you know about Sinclair's operation," Bishop said. "Every detail, no matter how small. It could be the key to bringing him down." Anya took a deep breath, steeling herself. She knew she was taking a huge risk, but she had no other choice. She had to trust Bishop, to believe that he was her only chance for freedom. Over the next hour, Anya revealed her story to Bishop, pouring out her heart and soul. She told him about her father's investigation, about Sinclair's threats, about the twisted bargain she had made to save her family. She described Sinclair's illegal activities in detail, naming names, providing dates, and outlining his network of complicit officials. She also revealed the location of Sinclair's hidden vault, a heavily guarded chamber where he stored his most valuable assets, cash, jewels, and incriminating documents. She knew the vault's security codes and the layout of the surrounding area. "This information is invaluable," Bishop said, his eyes filled with gratitude. "But it's also incredibly dangerous. If Sinclair finds out you've told me this, he'll kill you." "I know," Anya said, her voice resigned. "But I can't live like this anymore. I'd rather die fighting than spend another day in his prison." "Then we'll fight," Bishop said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll take down Sinclair and expose his crimes to the world. But first, we need to get you off this island." They began to formulate a plan, discussing escape routes, security measures, and potential allies. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to succeed. They were an unlikely alliance, bound together by a shared desire for freedom and justice. As they spoke, Bishop noticed a figure lurking in the shadows. Watching them intently, it was Serena Dubois, the seductive socialite. She had overheard their conversation and now knew their secret. The game had changed. They were no longer just trying to expose Sinclair. They were fighting for their lives. With Serena Dubois now aware of their alliance, Bishop and Anya knew they had to act fast. They decided to focus on gathering irrefutable evidence from Sinclair's hidden vault, information that could be leaked to the outside world, triggering a full-scale investigation and bringing Sinclair's empire crashing down. Anya, using her knowledge of the security codes and the vault's layout, planned to disable the alarms and grant Bishop access. Under the cover of darkness, they made their move. Anya, feigning illness, excused herself from dinner with Sinclair and slipped away to the vault's entrance. Bishop, using a pre-planned distraction, a small fire set in a remote part of the estate, drew Sinclair's security forces away from the main villa, creating a window of opportunity. Anya successfully disabled the alarms and opened the vault door, allowing Bishop to enter. Inside, he found a treasure trove of incriminating documents, financial records, ledgers detailing illegal transactions, and even video recordings of Sinclair's most depraved acts. He quickly began copying the data onto a secure drive, knowing that every second counted. Meanwhile, Anya waited nervously outside, keeping watch for any sign of approaching guards. The tension was palpable, the silence broken only by the distant sounds of sirens and the pounding of her heart. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that they were walking into a trap. Her instincts proved correct that as Bishop was finishing copying the data, Serena Dubois appeared, her face a mask of triumph. "I'm afraid your little game is over," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "Mr. Sinclair knows everything." Anya's heart sank. She had been betrayed, not just by Serena, but by her own naivete. She had allowed herself to believe that she could trust someone, that she could escape Sinclair's clutches. Now, all hope seemed lost. Before Anya could react, Thorne and a group of armed guards emerged from the shadows, surrounding her. She was outnumbered and outgunned. With no chance of escape, Thorne grabbed her roughly, his grip like iron. "You should have known better than to cross Mr. Sinclair," Thorne snarled. "Now you're going to pay the price." Inside the vault, Bishop heard the commotion and realized that Anya was in trouble. He grabbed the secure drive and prepared to fight his way out, knowing that he was walking into a deadly ambush as he emerged from the vault. He was met by a hail of gunfire. He used his training and experience to evade the bullets, moving quickly and strategically, taking down the guards one by one. But he was outnumbered, and the odds were stacked against him. He managed to reach Anya, who was being held captive. By Thorne, he lunged at Thorne, knocking him off balance and freeing Anya. But in the chaos, he was struck by a tranquilizer dart, sending him reeling. He fought to stay conscious, but the drug was taking its toll. His vision blurred, his movements slowed, and his strength began to fade as he collapsed to the ground, his body numb and unresponsive. Sinclair arrived, his face a mask of cold fury. He looked down at Bishop's unconscious form with contempt. "I knew there was something suspicious about you," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "I should have trusted my instincts." He turned to Anya, his eyes filled with disappointment. "And you," he said, "I thought you were smarter than this. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me." He ordered his guards to take Bishop away. "He's going to learn what happens to those who betray me," Sinclair said. "Make sure he suffers." Bishop was dragged away, his fate sealed. That he knew what awaited him: torture, interrogation, and ultimately, death. He had failed. He had been outmaneuvered and outgunned. And now, Anya was at Sinclair's mercy. The game was over, and Sinclair had one daughter, so he thought. Bishop awoke in a dimly lit cell, his body aching, his mind reeling. The tranquilizer had worn off, leaving him with a throbbing headache and a profound sense of failure. He was chained to a wall, his hands and feet bound, his movements severely restricted. He could hear the distant sounds of torture, the screams of other victims echoing through the corridors. He knew his time was limited. Sinclair wanted information: the location of the secure drive, the identities of Bishop's contacts, anything that could help him protect his empire. But Bishop was a trained operative, hardened by years of resisting interrogation. He would not break. That he began to assess his surroundings, searching for any opportunity to escape. The cell was small and sparsely furnished, with a single steel door and a barred window too high to reach. But Bishop knew that every prison had its weaknesses, its vulnerabilities. It was just a matter of finding them. He started by testing his bonds, straining against the chains, searching for a loose link or a weak point. He used his knowledge of pressure points and leverage to maximize his strength, slowly but surely working to loosen his restraints. Meanwhile, he observed his captors, studying their routines, their habits, their weaknesses. That he learned that the guards were poorly trained, easily distracted, and prone to complacency. He knew he could exploit their weaknesses to his advantage. After hours of relentless effort, Bishop finally managed to loosen one of his hand restraints. He used the freed hand to work on the other restraints, and within minutes, he was free. He quietly slipped out of the cell, his movements silent and stealthy. He navigated the labyrinthine corridors of Sinclair's prison. Using his knowledge of stealth and infiltration to avoid detection, he encountered several guards along the way, but he quickly and efficiently neutralized them. Using his bare hands and his knowledge of martial arts, he reached the prison's control room, where he disabled the security system, cutting off communications and unlocking all the cells. He freed the other prisoners, offering them a chance to escape and fight back against their captors. With a small army of freed prisoners at his side, Bishop launched a full-scale assault on Sinclair's prison. They fought their way through the corridors, taking down the guards and freeing more prisoners. The prison descended into chaos, a maelstrom of violence and rebellion. Bishop knew that his escape was only the first step. He needed to get off the island, to contact his allies, and to launch a full-scale assault on Sinclair's compound. He used a stolen radio to contact the director, relaying his situation and requesting assistance. The director responded immediately, dispatching a team of mercenaries to the island. The mercenaries, led by a grizzled veteran named Miller, were a force to be reckoned with, hardened by years of combat experience. As Bishop waited for the mercenaries to arrive, he rallied the freed prisoners, organizing them into a fighting force. He trained them in basic combat techniques, teaching them how to use weapons and how to fight as a team. When the mercenaries finally arrived, Bishop was ready. He joined forces with Miller and his team, and together they launched a full-scale assault on Sinclair's compound. They stormed the main villa, taking down the guards and freeing the remaining prisoners. The battle was fierce and bloody, with heavy casualties on both sides. But Bishop and his allies fought with unwavering determination, driven by a desire for freedom and justice. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they were not outmatched. They were fighting for something more than just their own lives. They were fighting for the soul of Isla Paradiso. The final showdown was approaching, and Sinclair was about to learn that even the most powerful empires can crumble under the weight of their own corruption. The assault on Sinclair's compound was a brutal and chaotic affair. The once pristine lawns of Isla Paradiso were now a battlefield, littered with debris and the bodies of fallen combatants. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and gunpowder, the sounds of gunfire and explosions echoing across the island. Bishop and Miller led the charge, their combined forces pushing relentlessly towards the main villa, Sinclair's last stronghold. They faced heavy resistance from Sinclair's security forces, who were well-armed and fiercely loyal. But Bishop's team was driven by a desire for freedom and justice, and they fought with unwavering determination. Meanwhile, Anya, who had managed to evade capture after Bishop's escape, played a crucial role in the assault. Using her knowledge of the villa's layout and security systems, she infiltrated the control room and disabled the surveillance cameras, giving Bishop's team a significant advantage. She also freed the remaining captives, arming them with makeshift weapons and urging them to join the fight. The newly freed prisoners, fueled by years of pent-up anger and resentment, eagerly joined the fray, swelling the ranks of Bishop's forces as Bishop's team fought their way through the villa. They encountered Thorne, Sinclair's ruthless security chief. Thorne, enraged by Bishop's escape and the chaos that had engulfed the island, vowed to kill him. A fierce battle ensued between Bishop and Thorne, a brutal clash of titans. They exchanged blows with savage intensity, their bodies bruised and bloodied. Thorne, with his superior size and strength, initially had the upper hand. But Bishop, with his superior skill and agility, managed to evade Thorne's attacks and exploit his weaknesses. After a grueling fight, Bishop finally managed to subdue Thorne, delivering a knockout blow that sent him crashing to the ground. He left Thorne for the other prisoners to deal with, knowing that they would exact their own form of justice. With Thorne out of the way, Bishop turned his attention to Sinclair, who was holed up in his private office, surrounded by his remaining guards. Bishop stormed into the office, his gun drawn, ready for the final showdown. Sinclair stood behind his desk, his face a mask of cold fury. He held a gun in his hand, his finger on the trigger. "It's over, Bishop," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "You can't win. It's never over until it's over, Sinclair," Bishop replied, his voice calm and unwavering. "And this is where it ends for you." A tense standoff ensued, the two men locked in a deadly gaze. The silence was broken only by the sound of their breathing, the air thick with anticipation. Suddenly, Sinclair lunged forward, firing his gun. Bishop reacted instantly, diving for cover and returning fire. The office erupted in a hail of bullets, the walls and furniture riddled with holes. Bishop and Sinclair exchanged fire, each narrowly avoiding being hit. The battle was intense and chaotic, a desperate struggle for survival. Finally, Bishop managed to gain the upper hand, disarming Sinclair and knocking him to the ground. He stood over Sinclair, his gun pointed at his head. "It's over, Sinclair," he said, his voice filled with contempt. "You're finished." Sinclair looked up at Bishop, his eyes filled with fear and desperation. "Please," he begged. "Don't kill me. I'll give you anything you want. Money, power, anything." "It's not about money or power, Sinclair," Bishop replied. "It's about justice. And you're going to pay for your crimes." He pulled the trigger, ending Sinclair's reign of terror once and for all. The battle for Isla Paradiso was over. The good guys had won, but the scars of the conflict would linger for a long time to come. With Sinclair dead, the reign of terror on Isla Paradiso was finally over. The surviving prisoners were freed, the corrupt officials were exposed, and Sinclair's criminal empire began to crumble. The secure drive that Bishop had risked his life to obtain was handed over to the director, who ensured that the information was leaked to the appropriate authorities, triggering a global investigation into Sinclair's illicit activities. The world was shocked by the revelations. The details of Sinclair's depravity splashed across headlines and television screens. Politicians were forced to resign, CEOs were arrested, and fortunes were seized. The fallout from Sinclair's downfall was widespread and devastating, but it was also a necessary step towards justice. Anya, finally free from Sinclair's grasp, was given a chance to start a new life. The director provided her with a new identity, a safe haven, and the resources she needed to rebuild her life. She decided to pursue her passion for art, enrolling in a prestigious art school and dedicating herself to her craft. She found solace and healing in her art, using it to express her pain and her hope for the future. The director's organization moved swiftly to clean up the remaining loose ends, silencing those who posed a threat to their operation and ensuring that the truth about their involvement remained hidden. They were the silent guardians, the unseen hand protecting the world from the excesses of power. Miller and his team of mercenaries were handsomely rewarded for their services, disappearing back into the shadows, ready for their next assignment. They were soldiers of fortune, driven by money and a thirst for adventure. They had played their part in bringing down Sinclair, and they were content to move on to the next battlefield. As for Bishop, he vanished as quickly as he had appeared. He left Isla Paradiso without a trace, disappearing back into the shadows from whence he came. He was a ghost, a phantom, a man without a past or a future. He was simply Bishop, a weapon wielded by a shadowy organization, a force for justice in a world filled with darkness that no one knew where he went or what he did next. Some said he was assigned to another mission, infiltrating another criminal organization, exposing another corrupt empire. Others said he had finally found peace, retiring to a remote island, far away from the violence and chaos of his former life. But those who knew Bishop knew that he would never truly find peace. He was a man haunted by his past, driven by a sense of duty that he could never escape. He would always be a soldier, a warrior, fighting for what he believed in, even if it meant sacrificing everything. As he disappeared into the shadows, Bishop left behind a world that was a little bit better, a little bit safer, a little bit more just. He had brought down a monster, freed the oppressed, and exposed the truth to the light. He had made a difference, even if no one would ever know his name. And as the sun set on Isla Paradiso, casting long shadows across the island, the audience was left to wonder about Bishop's next mission, about the next battle he would fight, about the next darkness he would confront. He was a force for good in a world filled with evil, and his story would continue, long after the credits had rolled. Months later, in a sun-drenched studio overlooking the rolling hills of Tuscany, Anya stood before an easel, her hands stained with paint. She was no longer the frightened and subservient woman trapped on Isla Paradiso. She was Anya Petrova, an artist reborn, finding strength and solace in her creativity. Her canvases were filled with vibrant colors and bold strokes, a reflection of her newfound freedom and her unwavering determination to overcome her past. She painted landscapes, portraits, and abstract expressions of her emotions, each piece a testament to her resilience and her indomitable spirit. One particular painting stood out, a portrait of a lone figure standing on a windswept beach, gazing out at the endless horizon. The figure was cloaked in shadow, his face obscured, but there was a sense of strength and purpose in his posture. Anya called it the Guardian. She had never forgotten Bishop, the man who had risked everything to save her. She knew she would likely never see him again, but she carried his memory in her heart, a constant reminder of the good that still existed in the world. Anya wasn't just painting for herself. She had established a foundation to help other victims of human trafficking, using her art to raise awareness and provide support to those who had suffered similar traumas. She had transformed her pain into purpose, becoming a beacon of hope for those who had lost everything. In a small, unassuming office in a bustling city, Bishop sat across from the director, his face as stoic and unreadable as ever. The director slid a file across the desk, its contents marked confidential. Bishop picked up the file, his eyes scanning the details of his new assignment. It was another dangerous mission, another corrupt empire to dismantle, another innocent life to save. He knew the risks, the sacrifices, the potential for failure. But he also knew that he couldn't turn away. He was a soldier, a warrior, a force for justice. It was his calling, his purpose, his destiny. The director watched him intently, her expression betraying nothing. "This one is particularly sensitive," she said, her voice low and serious. "The stakes are higher than ever. You'll be operating alone, with no backup. If you're compromised, we can't help you." Bishop nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Understood." He closed the file, his mind already calculating the angles, assessing the risks. He knew he was walking into the unknown, facing a formidable enemy. But he was prepared. He was Bishop, and he was ready to fight. As he stood up to leave, the director offered a rare, almost imperceptible smile. "Be careful, Bishop," she said. "The world needs you." Bishop simply nodded, turning and disappearing into the shadows. He was a ghost, a phantom, a man without a name or a past. But he was also a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always someone willing to fight for what's right. The final shot lingered on Bishop's silhouette as he walked away, disappearing into the urban landscape. The fight was far from over. The battle against evil would continue, waged by unseen warriors, silent guardians, and those who dared to stand up against the darkness. And as long as there were those willing to fight, there would always be hope for a better world. The end.